We're here. We're here. We're going to talk about, I guess, the year in review, and not that boring because I've seen like a million year in review emails and videos and podcasts and all that. We just want to go over the most important stuff for us that happened this year and in the MLOps ecosystem, not just in the community, but also in the ecosystem. We wanted to talk about big news. We wanted to talk about trends that we've seen, and we wanted to talk about some of our own personal learnings. That's it, huh?
Yes, sir. Yeah, great to be here as always, Demetrios. I view this as a celebration of
Oh,
a very eventful year, both for the overall MLOps ecosystem and for the community and for us. There's been so much that's happened. It's hard to kind of process that it all happened in the same calendar year over the same 12 months. But we're going to try and do that over this next 45 minutes to an hour, and let's get into it.
so let's start with this because when a lot of people don't know this, actually, a lot of people who haven't come to Slack recently or didn't join the Slack recently, they don't know that we got this tool called Campfire, and it basically onboards you onto Slack, and it tells you about all these different cool channels, and it tells you about all this stuff, and it asks you about what you're doing. And so when you go through this journey, it's like a choose your own adventure journey. And when you go through it, one of the questions it asks is, what are you most interested in learning about? And it gives a few answers, and it also gives like other, and then you can say what it is that you want. Out of the 1,000 people that filled out this questionnaire, and by the way, like not everybody has to do it, and a lot of people don't even realize that it's a bot that you can go through, but that's a whole nother topic. Out of the 1,000 people that did this, like 67% of them say that the most important thing for them right now is learning about serving models. That blew my mind. And for me, it just feels like, oh, I thought we got past that. I thought that was something that we
Wow.
figured out how to do. But it definitely is not. We're still in those early days. And it makes a lot of sense that you would see that because people are coming here, they're tasked with their MLOps initiatives, or they're just tasked with getting models out there. And so they want to figure out what are the best practices for that. But, it wasn't monitoring, it wasn't feature stores, it wasn't whatever crazy database or, like data-centric AI, none of that. None of those buzzwords. It is still about serving models.
That's really interesting. I did not realize that the proportion of people was so high. But as you said, I think it makes sense. I think the profile that I tend to see, and that I myself was when I joined the community in 2020, is a machine learning engineer charged with building models who realizes, wait, this model needs to do something, but there's nobody who's there to do the handoff, so I need to do it myself. And
Yeah.
then you realize, okay, I guess I should figure out how to serve the model, whatever that means. And then you
Mm,
Google around, you realize that serving models is MLOps, and then you find the MLOps community. I honestly believe that that is our number
bam.
one sort of profile of people that walks in the door.
Yeah.
And that was my own journey. And it's crazy to think, kind of jumping from that point in talking about Campfire 2, 1 year ago, in January 2021, this community was 2,600 people.
Hmm.
And right now, as we speak, it is at 7,500 people. This community has literally tripled in size in the
Yeah.
time that we've been recording these podcasts, hanging out, talking about all those trends that you mentioned, and just kind of being around. And that always blows my mind because even at 7,500 people, I know that we're not at even 1% of the people who will
Mm,
eventually work on MLOps problems, right?
that's it.
And that always kind of gets me gets me going in the morning.
The amount of people that are in the general Slack channel, though, it is a bit of a vanity metric. I will tell you that much. It's nice to throw around the big numbers, but really what is more important is how many people are engaging, how many people are actually coming back, not just like signing up and then asking a question and then never to be seen or heard from again. But the people who are being active members of the community, I think, is the most interesting and most fun. And those are where the real numbers come in. And so, like, out of those 7,000, we get around like 1,400 active members. And so that's still pretty good in my mind. That is awesome to see. And all of
Absolutely.
those, yeah, all the other people that come check in every once in a while, or maybe have moved on and aren't doing anything with ML anymore, or maybe just like are buried in work, whatever. We're here, they know where we are, or maybe, of course, like the insecurities always are like, well, they didn't like what I had to say, so they left. But I don't think it's that.
Well,
Maybe some people, but not the majority. Yeah. And
the way I kind of see it is in sort of two respects, right? Where there's you have your signing up for the community is an expression of interest, right, in the overall trend.
hmm,
And I think the number of people that have signed up just shows that, interest in MLOps is certainly exploding. And we've known that, right? And it's just cool to see that reflected. And to your point, you're totally right that the number of people that are active is a lot more of a measure of the community's health and progress and improvement. And, 1,500 active members, I see that. I see the growth in activity. I see the growth in the number of people, who are consistently high quality contributors. And I
hmm,
think that's actually, one of the things that when we're talking about community progress, and just talking about an update on the community, I think it has been so amazing to see consistently high quality interactions, even as the community has grown. I mean, the questions that are answered, I mean, the
yeah,
number of threads that are 99 replies now is actually pretty crazy. um, People getting jobs, the unique
I
community
love that.
atmosphere. I feel like these interactions, it's a marvel to see how the community has continued to maintain that.
Yep. Yeah, that is a beautiful thing. There are, and different projects being launched. I love seeing all of that. The ecosystem is strong. That is without a doubt. So let's keep it moving though. What for you? I know we threw some questions on here and we wanted to ask each other some. What was your favorite moment in a podcast this year that we had?
That's a tough question. I think for me, my favorite moment was probably, I think it's a tie between interviewing Cody Coleman
Hmm.
or interviewing D Scully. And I can't point to a particular moment in either,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like a very specific moment. But I think with Cody, what just made sense to me is like, a lot. I view what I do in this podcast as being kind of learning in public,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where it's like, a lot of what I'm doing at work, I'm kind of showing up and kind of saying, hey, this is what's going on in my head. And at the time that I was talking to Cody, I was really starting to understand, man, there's so much like fundamental data engineering work that has to happen for machine learning in production at scale,
Yeah.
right? And I was like really starting to wrap my head around like, data warehouses, data orchestration, and like all the other components of it's like the modern data stack. And I think that conversation with him really kind of was like a light bulb moment where I was like, oh, okay, so this is the way things are now, and this is the way things can be, right?
Mm.
When we were talking about how, you know, ultimately machine learning is really about, you know, having the data, to answer the questions that, you want to be able to forecast or figure out. So I'd say that was one of it. There's kind of a personal light bulb moment. And then the other one was just interviewing D Scully, from Google Brain, kind of a legend. That was kind of like a mama, I made it moment where it's like, man, to have, the kind of, the person who was like prescient enough to write in 2015, I think, the
Yeah.
high interest credit card paper when, at a point where most people hadn't even, really weren't even thinking about deep learning,
Mm-hmm.
most people, right? To even write this paper that still really stands up to the test of time. That's when I was kind of like, wow, it was like this is a very special moment for me.
Yeah. Shout out to Todd Underwood for helping out with that one and making the connection, because D is like offline and is really hard to get a hold of and get to do anything. So I think Todd really helped in that, since they know each other and they're writing a book together, which you can all find. It's called Reliable Machine Learning, and they've released a few of the chapters already. So get out there and read it
Oh,
if you want to one up your skills on that. That was a huge piece of news. I'm very glad that that got out. And then to Cody, after he, so this is the craziest story about Cody. I read this book
okay.
called Grit, and I read it
Hmm.
probably at the beginning of the year or middle
Uh-huh.
of the year. And then we interviewed Cody, and I
Right.
didn't think anything of it. And when I followed up with Cody, I was like, "Hey, dude, there's some people asking about this or that, or oh, we needed his bio for the promo." And it was like, "Hey, we need your bio." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I think that the best bio that I've seen done on me was from when they interviewed me for this book, Grit." And I was like, "Wait, what? You were in that book?"
Wow.
And he's like, "Yeah, that was
No
me.
way.
I'm the Cody Coleman from that book."
You're
I'm just
kidding
like,
me.
no way. That book, it had a huge impact on me. Just thinking about how I live my life, how much grit I have. I was honestly like every page I was questioning, like, do I have grit? Do I have enough grit to like stay in there? I don't know. So obviously, I do a lot of things to test my grit and see how gritty I am. But it was a superb book. And then later finding out that Cody was one of the use cases that they talked about in that book. And then later like thinking, wow, wait a minute, which one was he? Oh yeah, I remember his story. And then going back and in the interview with him, he told us his story. And so it all came together. That was the Cody moment.
Yeah.
And I loved that, man. That's super cool that you also found it really interesting.
Yeah. And I have a question for you. What has been your biggest surprise over the year?
Oh, besides the fact that people actually listen to us, um,
Yeah, always surprising.
oh, there was one. So it was around. I mean, I guess what's that? You can't see the trees in the forest or some saying like that.
What is it?
And
Don't miss the forest for the trees or something like that?
yeah,
Yeah.
some shit like that. Somebody will tell us. And so basically, I was talking to a guy that worked on the YouTube Rexus, and he told me that he watched one of the interviews we had, and at some point in the interview, we were talking about Kubeflow. And later he said, "Well, you know what? You might want to explain what Kubeflow was because I didn't even know what that was before like before actually seeing this episode, and I had to go look it up." I was like, "Wait a minute. You work at YouTube on their recommendation system and you didn't know what Kubeflow was?" That was a huge shocker to me. That one where it just made me realize, yeah, like it's not as ubiquitous, or Kubeflow in general and just open source tooling and the MLOps ecosystem is not as clear and as easy to navigate. Well, of course, we knew it wasn't easy to navigate, but it just is not clear at all. And there's a lot of tools that people skip over because they're not using them or they don't interact with them on their day-to-day basis. And so this guy, I was just amazed by that because YouTube, obviously owned by Google or Alphabet, and you would think, considering Kubeflow was like born out of Google, that he at least would have heard of it. But no, that was probably one of the biggest surprising moments for me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you bring this up. And I have two kind of thoughts on it. Number one, there's a real tendency in any kind of engineering, but I really believe in particular in software engineering and its sibling machine learning engineering of like really jargonizing the field, right? Uh, and I think that, for example, if you go on Hacker News or if you go on any one of like, if you go and read, blogs on Medium or engineering blogs in general, like there's a heavy emphasis on like talking about the tools that are in vogue or concepts that are in vogue or languages. And, the reality is that a large portion of what's discussed may not actually be what's used,
Hmm.
right? And I think one of the best instances of that for me was reading Vicki Boykis's blog titled "You Don't Need Apache Kafka."
Huh.
Because like, you look at like a lot of like data engineering job postings and stuff like that, people are like, oh yeah, experience with Kafka needed. And then she just kind of laid it out and she was like, in what world is everyone using Kafka?
Yeah,
Right? And
honestly.
I was like, you're right. I've never really needed to think about it that much. I mean, I wish David were here because David would have like a great response and be able to talk at length about why it was, useful and whatnot. But it's like, there's a lot of discussion that goes on about pretty specific niche kind of like in-group topics that I actually do think that our community does a good job of trying to avoid or de-jargonize. But it's still possible to fall into it.
Yeah.
Um, and then the second thought that I have is I think that what you described in general, right? Like the situation of an engineer at YouTube working on their recommender systems. I thought that Jacopo's um,
Oh yeah.
podcast with us was really interesting in that regard because he was like, the same way that you don't need Apache Kafka or that famous blog post from Bradfield CS School about you are not Google,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like Jacopo was like, if you're not Google and if you're not using Apache Kafka, what are you doing, right? You're doing MLOps at reasonable scale. And then he laid out the tool stack for it. He laid out the concepts for it. And I think like the number one thing that I want to take into 2022 is really kind of building my intuition around that, around
Mm.
MLOps at reasonable scale, engineering, data engineering at reasonable scale. Because the more I think about my career and the kind of places I want to be in, the more I realize that those are the kinds of problems I'm going to be facing.
Okay, so let's build on that a little bit. What are you most excited about for 2022?
For the community or just in general?
You take it however you want to take it. There's no rules here, man. I'm gonna
That's
let you.
true. That's true.
What are you most excited about? It doesn't have to be for the community or for your personal life, your love life. I don't care
I mean, I think I'm gonna give a couple different answers. All right, I'm gonna talk for a while, Demetrios.
about your love
Um,
life.
I think for I think for the community, what I'm really excited about is the fact that we have really grown our organizer team. You know,
Mm.
already in 2021, we added on Morris, who's helping us with our blog. People, please write blogs. Talk to Morris if you want to. We added Andre, who's doing a phenomenal job with the reading group, and Carlos, who's doing a phenomenal job with the newsletter,
Yes.
and you know, Artem, who's helping us with AMAs. And I'm really excited about growing that team more. I want
Mm.
more people helping us out with the communities, running interesting projects, doing things that ultimately, make the community a better place to hang out and learn. And I think that, we kind of figured out a little bit of the kinks in terms of bringing people on, identifying our needs. I think we kind of went through some growing pains in doing that. And now that we figured that out, we are really a much better place, in a much better place to like have additional people join us. And I think we're going to have that happen. So, community standpoint, that's what I'm really excited about. I think from like a professional and sort of like ecosystem standpoint, I think I have really like my journey in this ML world has kind of been starting off with in a very traditional sense, as that like most data scientists do, which is like starting with a model.fit, right? Somebody gives me, a CSV and I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to go try and, run a logistic regression. I'm going to try to do an SVM and then I'm going to try a Keras neural net and, whatever, right? It's a very sort of standard start to the data scientist, machine learning engineer journey. And over time, I've had to grapple with different aspects of that, right? So I started off with the model.fits, and then I had to think about serving, that model, and then I had to think about training infrastructure. And, now I'm at the kind of point where I'm thinking a lot more about data analytics, data engineering, and like I would say like cloud DevOps in general.
Mm.
And I really view these additional tools as really important, like fundamental skills that allow me to understand how to put machine learning into production better. Because, and I was reading this book called The Informed Company, which Skylar Payne actually told us about.
Oh,
And in
nice.
that, yeah, I actually bought it and I read it and it's great. Shout out to Skylar. In that book, they were like, a modern, effective analytical stack is the foundation of an effective approach to machine learning. And I really feel like in 2022, I'm going to understand that foundational piece a lot better.
Wait, can you say
So
that
that's what I'm
again?
most excited about.
I didn't. What? Say that again. That last part.
A modern effective analytical stack, right? So the ability to like run SQL queries on a data warehouse, right?
Uh,
On clean data that you have a data model for. and output basic business metrics is the foundation for an effective approach to machine learning, right? And more advanced sort of machine learning stuff. Like if you don't know, whether if your data is clean or not, or if you
Yeah.
can't produce basic business intelligence visualizations, you're probably not at the maturity level to, apply machine learning models in your, in your business.
So basically,
And
there's different levels. You got to pass this level first before you can get to the big boss.
yeah, I mean, there's a famous blog post about like data, the hierarchy of data science needs or data needs.
Uh-huh.
And I think that statement is kind of saying that exactly, which is just like, you got to figure out your analytics stuff. You got to figure out your basic blocking and tackling before you can do the fancy machine learning stuff. But in a funny way, the way I think a lot of data scientists out there have started, I started at the weird top part of that hierarchy. I started off on the modeling stuff, and now I'm kind of
Yeah.
getting to the foundation, and that's what I'm excited about.
Excellent. Can I tell you what I'm stoked about real fast before we
Yeah, I
move
want to
on?
hear it. I want to hear it.
Dude, well, I mean, there's all kinds of initiatives that we've got that I want to move forward in the new year, but what I was thinking about it, like, what am I most stoked about? What am I most excited about when it comes to 2022? And it's probably around the ability to meet different people and like actually get to know the community more. So that is not only with in-person meetings. Hopefully we're going to be doing more of those and I can use it as an excuse to travel the world. I was talking to somebody and they were like, "Oh yeah, does Costa Rica have a big MLOps community? Because we should go there and have the next
There's a
meetup
south
be
of
there."
France.
Yeah, exactly. But one thing that I think is absolutely amazing that I've been doing a lot lately is with that Campfire like onboarding app, you get the choice to have 15 minutes chat with me. And so if somebody wants to, they can click yes and then book out some time. And I've met some incredible people just from doing that. So anybody that is crazy enough to have a chat with me, it's like you can go and book out some time from a Calendly link, and then I get to actually put a face to a name and see what you're working on. See like what's hard for you. How do you think the community will be helpful to you? And so it's almost in a way like user feedback or product research. I don't know what you would call it, but it's also just like human contact, we could say. And so I get to meet new people and have all of these cool experiences with different people that are all over the globe and working on all different types of problems. And I can pick their brains about it for 15 minutes. So that's what I'm probably the most stoked on, that continued trend of getting to meet people.
It's funny. I I think I gave you that idea. And I
Yeah,
gave you
you
that
did.
idea knowing very much that I would not be able to do it. I would go crazy if people were like blocking like 20-minute chats on my calendar to kind of like catch up. I was like,
Every
I
day.
was like every day, right? And I said that idea to you, and I was like, huh, I wonder if he's gonna do it. And I wonder if he's gonna ask me to do it too, because there's no way I'm gonna do it. Which is not that I'm not interested in meeting people. I love meeting people. It's been
Uh,
great being a part of this community, but it's more just like the mechanics, right? I struggle
yeah.
enough to manage my calendar on a day-to-day basis. But the reason I say that is because I never imagined how much you take to it and how effective it has been in terms of giving you an intuition for like what the community needs. I feel like it's made you a much
Yeah.
better steward of the community, just by like having these like chats with people, um, who just want to kind of figure out what's going on.
Yep.
It's pretty crazy.
And there hasn't been really a bad chat yet. I am expecting one to come where that's why I only put 15 minutes. Usually we'll go over 15 minutes, but
Uh-huh.
if it's like, oh, if you're checking the clock in a 15-minute meeting, then it's probably not the best chat. I've only had
Yeah.
like one
Yeah.
where I'm actually checking the clock, like, all right, yeah, so see you later. There's the 15 minutes are up. But for the most part, it's been awesome. I've been able to meet so many cool people, and it just is really inspirational to see what people are working on. So, yeah, let's keep it moving though,
I
man.
think, all
Oh yeah, tell me
right.
before we go.
Well, I was
What's the
gonna
next
say,
thing you were gonna say?
I think it'd be interesting if you had like a blog post where you just talked about all the different people you met, or like the aggregate statistics,
Oh,
right?
that'd be
Like how
cool.
many meetings you had, how many different countries they were from, what some of their projects were on. Like I just think things like that are always really cool. You
Yeah.
have all the data sitting on your calendar. You just need to scrape it,
Yeah,
you
now I
know?
got to go back through it and be like, who was I? Because the logistics around this are, just so people know, I leave in my Calendly, I just have 1 hour or an hour and a half of free time each day,
Mm.
except for Wednesdays when we have the meetups. And then I let people choose some blocks in there. But if you do a 15-minute meeting, it blocks off 30 minutes just in case we go over. So I don't have, so basically I'll have like slots for 2 meetings a day. And people are like, how do you have so much time for that? What is this? This will drive me crazy. But I love it, man. I absolutely love it. And it's only an hour. It's not like it's that much time. I feel like I have
You
so many benefits from doing it that now I can't see myself not doing it. And this goes to everyone that is listening too. If you want to just book some time with me, just reach out and I'll probably send you that Calendly link. I love talking to people. I don't know what it is, man. It's just great talking to people, especially you. Let's keep moving. Next, I wanted to mention a few different news blurbs that came up. I'll just rapid fire through them. We had the huge proposal from the EU on their AI regulation. I go into that in depth so much because I have, maybe a lot of people don't know this, but I have another podcast that looks at the AI ethics of things. And so if you want to find that, it's called Are You a Robot? Just search Are You a Robot podcast and you'll find everything on that. And we go way deep on that subject. A lot of people were not so happy with it, but it is something that is probably necessary. I'm still up in the air about it, how it's going to be implemented, and if it's going to be just like GDRP, where you've got this, or GDPR, where you've got like all of a sudden every website now has accept cookies, or is it actually going to be useful and it's going to keep us from creating killer drones that are run by facial recognition, which is not even part of that at all, but that's for another topic. Anyway, that's one news blurb that I felt like was newsworthy enough to mention and talk about. The other one, so here's a few now from like different vendors or tooling sector. We've got KF Serving graduated to K-Serve, so it's no longer in the Kubeflow community. Well, it's in the Kubeflow community, but it's like graduated out of the Kubeflow ecosystem. And I thought I was hilarious when I made a tweet about that said like, K-Serve dropped the effing. And nobody else thought that was that funny. So
I
then
thought it
there
was funny.
was, it wasn't that funny. Dad jokes. So we also had from ClearML, they got to version 1.0. And we also had Teachable Hub got to version 1. Shout out to ClearML, Ariel, the Meme King, and Teachable Hub. I mean, we've had those folks on here before, but Vessi is such a cool person and a great contributor to the community. And then I think that was it that I wrote down. Did you have any other news that you felt newsworthy-ish?
I think that's mostly it in terms of like news. And then, of course, there's a million different acquisitions and spinouts and funding
Mm.
rounds that, we could go on and on about. You want to take that?
Oh man, acquisitions. If you didn't hear, Converge got bought by Intel, and then you have Determined AI got bought by HPE,
Congrats to
and
them. They're community members.
also yes, and then of course like the sponsors, Algorithmia, they are now Data Robot, so they are still sponsoring us, but under a different name, under a different banner, and
Congrats to Diego and the team there.
Yes, Diego doing some cool stuff with them, just changed it up a little bit. So, yeah, that was the acquisitions. Those were the main acquisitions. I know there was also Kubanachi, who I had heard about back in the beginning of the year. I don't know if they got bought this year, at the beginning of this year, or the end of last year. They got bought by Databricks.
Cool.
Speaking of Databricks, let's talk about like funding rounds. And oh my God, Databricks just raised so much money. I don't even know what you would do with that much money. Like honestly, they raised 1.6 billion at a valuation of 38 billion. Oh my
My
God.
theory is that they just shred dollars there. That's my theory. That's why they keep raising
Or they have
money.
bonfires with them.
Yeah,
Good
they just shred
Lord.
the money.
Yeah. So that was Databricks. Then we've got Weights and Biases, WanDB, got
On
100
DB.
million Series C, which is also a little outrageous to me, but whatever. Like valuations and funding rounds are through the roof these days. And then we've got Selden Core. They raised the Series A, I think. Run AI got like a 30 million one. We've got Tecton raised their Series B. I think that was like 36 million. Snorkel got a huge one at 85 million. Hugging Face, I don't even remember what it was. I think it was 40 million, but that was a huge one too. Then Domino Data Lab, which I find hilarious because right when they raised, it was right when Weights and Biases raised. So like nobody talked about how Domino Data Lab got 100 million. Everybody was talking about how Weights and Biases got their Series C 100 million. And it's like, oh yeah, Domino Data Lab's just kind of like over here. Yeah, we also got 100 million. It's all good. You see Gretel raised they raised 50 million for a synthetic data platform. Arise AI, another sponsor. So their raise has been going to a good cause. They got 19 million. And then is that all of it? I think that's all of them.
ZenML.
Monte Carlo. They got a Series C right after they raised like their Series B, and they totaled up to like 101 million raised. They still have not sponsored us, which is surprising. They've got enough money for it. So what are you waiting for, Monte Carlo? Anyway, the other ones, we've got Spinouts, two huge Spinouts. Oh, I forgot on the funding rounds. There's one that I'm really excited to talk about, and that is ZenML. They got a seed fund, and I don't know if you know this, Vishnu, but I actually put a little bit of my own money into that. And so
Okay, all right.
yes, I am an angel in that seed fund. So I can put it on my LinkedIn profile that I am angel investor. And
Well,
so
now
I'm
you're going to
super
heaven, man.
stoked,
You're an angel investor. I don't know if you
dude.
know this, but that's the credential. God looks if you've written a $10,000 check into any company, and that's why it's
Oh,
called angel.
yes. Angel. That is it. I'm going to grow wings. And so ZenML, go check them out.
Congratulations to them and
Full
you.
disclosure, I'm an investor in them, but they've got a cool open source project. Really highly recommend it. Let's talk about spinouts though. We have Metaflow that was spun out of Netflix. Their new name or their like company name is called Outer Bounds. We know those folks because they've been on the podcast. I mean, Seven and I met him when I was in San Francisco. He came to the in-person meetup. That was awesome. So Outer Bounds, they are doing stuff. Then Kaitan, my man Kaitan, who we interviewed here too, spinning flight out of Lyft, and the company name is called Union. So both of those were awesome spinouts that we get to see, and I'm really excited for how it goes, like what happens with these companies. And shout out to Flight also and Kaitan because they are sponsoring us. Yes, they chose to become sponsors of the MLOps community and show that they believe in this project. That is it. I mean, as if that wasn't enough, we had a few really cool events this last year. I want to just shout out a few, and just three of them, to be honest. MLOps World, we collaborated with them. That was superb. A lot of people came from the MLOps world ecosystem. They joined the MLOps community ecosystem. And I love what Dave and the whole like Toronto Machine Learning Society is doing, and the caliber and quality of talks that they have for their events. The other one that was something that you know about, Mr. Vishnu, because you were a panelist on the panel that I led. Wait, could I say on the panel that I paneled? I hosted a panel, whatever. So I paneled a panel, and you were a panelist, and that was for Transform X by Scale AI. Oh, they raised a
That was an
huge
awesome
amount
conference.
too. Oh, I forgot. Did they raise it this year? I feel like they raised a ton this year. They still haven't
I have no
sponsored
idea.
either. So marketing at scale, if you're listening, what's up, man? So then we had Apply, which I hosted, and that was a blast. I got to do some guided meditations. All of these, like the Transform X, the MLOps World, and the Apply stuff, it's all on YouTube in case anybody wants to go and watch it retroactively. Let's talk about the community progress and what's been going on in the community.
Yeah, I just want to make one comment about all this ecosystem stuff, before we kind of move on and maybe do some community reflections and stuff like that to close out. You know, it's a trite thing to observe, but there's a lot going on, right? You're looking at the number of companies that are being funded, you're looking at the number of talks that are being given, the amount of knowledge and best practices and blogs and everything that are being shared, even things like our podcast. Like, this ecosystem is booming. And honestly, I think it can be overwhelming. You know, it can be really overwhelming because, even for me, I'm sitting here running a podcast about MLOps with you, Demetrios, and even I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know what half the companies that are on that list do. It's like, how do I keep track of all this? And I just kind of wanted to say that because I think it's like, I think it's a sentiment that probably a lot of people also share. If you're out there and you're feeling similarly, I feel you. If this all can be a little bit overwhelming. And I think, the way I try to process this is kind of say, like, be laser focused about what problems you're trying to solve, right? And you'll find the right tool in the process, right? Focus on problems, not so much on solutions, because you don't want to be the guy that's swinging around a hammer at anything, even if it's not a nail. And, I think that sentiment kind of bubbled up for me as I was hearing you go through what is an extremely blooming and blossoming ecosystem. I mean, it's very easy to kind of think you need to do it all when, you know, life is short, time is short, 24 hours in a day, 8 of which you should sleep. So don't feel like you got to do it all. That's kind of my thought. I don't know. What do you think, Demetrios?
I just realized that I forgot a few companies on that list when you were saying it. We have Modzy. Modzy also raised a seed
Okay, all
investment,
right.
and we have Y Labs. They raised a Series A for 10 million, and we also have Comet. They raised the Series A and Series B, just absurd amounts. And what you said is brilliant, though, Vishnu. Like, just like figure out what the problems are. You could probably fix the problem without any of these fancy, shiny ML tools. Like, you should try and, I like that, be laser focused on the problem, not have a hammer looking for a nail. So, should we get into some of the community highlights and the different
Absolutely.
growth? And this is for those who have not read. If you would like to see like all of the community highlights in depth and at a much deeper level, I wrote a blog post about it, and you can find that in the description below. There's a ton of data points and stats from that, but we'll quickly go over some of the most important stuff, mainly those vanity metrics, because everybody likes to feel good every once in a while. So let's talk about some vanity metrics. We had just huge growth all around. I think that was pretty apparent. What I loved, I'm going to say, one of my favorite things about this last year, and it just started happening at the end of the year, was getting guest hosts, just being able to rope in random people from the the community to host with me because Vishnu cannot dedicate all day, every day to the community. So he has to put a limit. He has to throttle us a little bit when it comes to how many podcasts he can do per week. And
I need to pretend to be an engineer occasionally, not just a
occasionally,
podcast host.
exactly. So yeah, your boss will be pissed if you're just constantly producing 10 podcasts a week. And
Exactly.
so yeah, man, it was really cool to see that, like just how much people have rallied around the community and they're starting to like feel it's like there's a common denominator between us, or there's a shared identity, I think, between us. And so people are willing
Absolutely.
to help out on that.
No, I mean, I think I was really excited to see that too because, you know, there are a lot of high quality people that are a part of this community who share their knowledge. And, one thing that I certainly hope and want the community to become is a place where anybody can build a platform of their own,
Mm,
inside or outside of the community, right? There are a lot of people with a lot of knowledge to share, people like Laszlo, Neil, Han,
Skylar,
um, Tim, Skylar, so many, those are just a few of the names. Basically, just
Ben.
there's so many more that I can't even name, but um, you know, all those people, they really show up, they bring their expertise, they give their knowledge without expectation in return. And it's cool that, we can, have them on the podcast and tap their knowledge and give them, a platform of their own to also kind of contribute on. I thought that was a great touch as well, man.
Awesome. So we had some new projects, and one of those was David's little baby. Too bad he is
Yeah.
not here to defend himself, but he worked his ass off for the system design reviews. We got to give him some credit for that because it was not an easy feat. He took a really in-depth blog post. He interviewed the guy that wrote the blog post, and then he turned it into an animation video. I'm excited about that. He only did one the whole year, though. What the fuck, David? He's got to do more next year. That's what I'm going to be putting some pressure on him because I loved it so much that I want more, man. It's like you can't keep me waiting a year until the next thing comes out. That's worse than like my
For
favorite
sure.
series.
And I just want to talk a little bit more about that because I just think that that is a perfect encapsulation in so many ways of like the creative energy that this community has. David saw a blog post that he thought was interesting, and he said, okay, I am going to dive ultra deep into how Pinterest, right, a world-class company that has an incredible machine learning engineering team that built this really cool image similarity search system. I want to learn everything about how they've done it. And he became an
Mm.
expert. Ben Rogojan, the Seattle data guy, joined us. We had a coffee session with the author himself, Shaji Chandankunamel, who is just like an incredible engineer. Like I highly encourage anybody who is interested in becoming a sort of senior or staff engineer and really furthering their engineering progression to listen to that episode because you can see what expertise at work looks like, right? It's one thing to see the finished product of engineering, and it is another thing to look at the process by which the product is created. And you
Yes.
learn a lot more, I think, from process because process is what happens on a day by day basis. And it's ultimately how you become better by refining your process. And that is exactly what that entire review shone a light on, right? How Pinterest goes through the process of developing world-class engineering to supplement their incredible business model. I thought that that was such a cool project. Thanks, David, for pioneering that. And yeah, do more
Yes.
next year.
Yeah, and hopefully more people will come with more interesting initiatives and we can just use all this sponsorship money to support those. That's like
I
one
mean,
of my
that's what
favorite
it's all
things
about,
too.
right?
That's it, man. That is it. So, yeah, come to us with initiatives. If you got some cool ideas that you want to throw across, then we're open. We're pretty much open to anything. And I mean, yeah, if almost anything, I would say. I do play guitar. I play
Just about.
poor guitar at the beginning of each meetup, so you don't have to get the bar that high.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
the other thing that we should call out is the blog. The blog has been awesome. We've got Morris on it. We're going to start doing more engineering focused blog posts. It's going to be more in depth. A lot of really cool stuff is in the pipeline for that. I don't know if you know, Vishnu, but I am writing a blog post that is going to be a little bit controversial. I'll probably have you proofread it before it goes out. I'm going to have
Okay.
everyone I know proofread it before it goes
Is it gonna
out.
make me cry?
No, it's all about how the modern ML stack is a lie. And there is no such
Okay.
thing, nor will there ever be. That is my blog post that hopefully I'll be able to get out by the end of January. But it's a huge endeavor. I'm like working with you know Joe Reese from Ternary
Yeah.
Data.
Yeah.
I'm working with him on it because he is writing a book right now with O'Reilly all about data engineering fundamentals. And so he's been
Right.
really good about advocating for what are the fundamentals in MLOps, not what is the stack that you want to be looking at.
Mm.
So that's like the TLDR of that post.
That
But
sounds great.
we're basically going through and we're thrashing the modern data stack, and then we're thrashing anybody that's tried to say the modern ML stack, and we're going to try and make it very clear with sound arguments and hopefully a little bit of shit talking so that people will share it. And,
Yeah, I'm excited to read that. Definitely excited. Send it over.
all right, now some milestones. What did we have happen this year? I know you got a new job. David got a new
Yes,
job.
sir. Yes, sir.
I didn't really get a new job. I feel like I'm left out, but a ton of people in the community got new jobs. That's
Yep.
always so inspiring to hear. I try and write about it in the newsletters whenever I hear about those stories, but like if someone is looking for a new job and you are in the community, there are so many opportunities. That is so true. There's like, don't settle for a shitty job or a shitty boss at all. Like, get out there, like contact me if you think you need a job and you feel like you have a good curriculum or a resume. I know like 10 companies that are hiring right now. So definitely that is cool. What else do we have?
I think from a personal milestone standpoint, certainly the jobs were a big part of it. I think formalizing the community was a big part of it, really kind of bringing together an organizing team. Me joining kind of as sort of like not just a co-host of the podcast, but also as sort of head of operations. That was a big personal milestone for me. And I just think like, sometimes a milestone's a lesson. And, I think a big lesson for me this year has been being impressed by the quality of the people that are working on machine learning engineering, and ML ops in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a framework that I don't know when I picked it up, but that I try to apply to a situation is like, it's not the size of the problem that matters, it's the quality of the people that matter.
Mm.
And, like if you think about it at any point in human history, John F. Kennedy said, "Hey, we're going to walk on the moon in 10 years." And he didn't know anything about the moon, but he said, "I'm going to go and get the best people that, America has and put them on this problem." And it happened, right? And I kind of get that sense when I sit and hang around the community, in terms of the quality of the people that are working on this machine learning stuff that, there's going to be a lot of really cool machine learning products and impactful machine learning products that are going to be in people's lives over the next few years. And that's directly a function of the quality of the people that are working on those products. And that I think has been a big lesson for me, is to continue to surround
Excellent.
myself with people like that.
Excellent, man. You know what? I actually will finish out with this. One of my biggest learnings, it didn't come from when we were in a podcast. It came from when I was talking to my friend who is an engineering manager at Launch Darkly. And he talked about how for what he's seen throughout his career, throughout his like tenure, is that the engineers who are able to be effective at knowledge sharing are the ones that raise through the ranks more quickly. And so it's been a bit of a theme that I keep coming back to when we're talking with guests. I love asking them, how are you making sure that if your machine learning engineer gets hit by a bus going to work tomorrow, all of these processes don't just go out the window with them? And God
Mm.
forbid he gets hit by a bus. Hopefully it's like, as one guest said, I think it was, I can't remember who it was, but it's like, hopefully it's just that they have a baby and they take their parental leave. But this knowledge sharing piece is so difficult when it comes to machine learning and ML ops. And so how can you effectively make sure that there are the proper knowledge hub in place or the proper processes in place so that anyone can do it and it's not just this information that is siloed in one person's head? With that, I think we're going to have to call it a good night. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This hopefully will come out before the year end, and we will see you all next year. We have to give a shout out to all of the sponsors that we've got. They've been incredible this whole year. We mentioned them before, but if you are at all interested in monitoring, we've got Arise AI, we've got Superwise, and Fiddler. They're doing the explainability thing. Check out any of those sponsors in the monitoring space. We've also got Tecton sponsoring us in the feature store space. We've got Flight, aka Union, in the infrastructure space, and there is Data Robot when it comes to the everything space, that platform. So hopefully you all have a wonderful New Year's party like it's 1999, and we'll see you all for 2022. I'm so stoked for this. Vishnu, it's been great, man. I'll talk to you later.